Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I am Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every week, so don't forget to press the alert button and join us each week for our adventures.
And do hit like if you enjoyed this particular video. Stephen, we're under a tree.
Yes, and it's very interesting.
Oh, dad jokes. Why are we under this very interesting tree, Stephen?
Because today's story is all about the interesting genus of the hawthorns, the Crataegus. And this is the mother of the ones we're going to be looking at today.
Wow, this sounds like sort of 70s sci-fi. Well, I think without any further ado, we should go and look at the mother of all hawthorns.
Yes, why not indeed.
Off we go. All right, Stephen.
Here we are standing in front of a very good specimen of the Mexican hawthorn, Cretagus mexicana.
Beautiful.
And in our climate, it's evergreen.
Yes.
It's as tough as they come. It's drought tolerant, it's heat tolerant, it's cold tolerant. And in fact, in colder climates, the only thing that will happen is it could well become semi-deciduous.
Right.
Or even maybe deciduous. But it's normally evergreen in our climate. The yellow fruit ripens as the winter comes on, and the birds seem to leave it alone till it hits the ground.
There you go. It's a beautiful tree. So this one is just planted by the side of a drive, so it will be used as a specimen tree.
It can be a great specimen tree, or as we'll see later, you can use these trees as fantastic screens and hedges.
Aha.
The other thing you should be aware of course, is that it's also edible.
Is it?
Yes, so for those of you who are out there planting things in a permaculture-esque way,
Yep.
you could plant the Mexican hawthorn because the fruit can be used to make jams, jellies and preserves. It's not as commonly used in Mexico as it once was, now that they can get apples and pears and larger fruit, but it's still available in markets over there, and there's nothing better in the morning than getting up to a jar of Hawthorn jelly on your toast.
I will challenge you on that, but anyway.
What can I say?
The fruit is beautiful. It's early winter. It is so yellow and bright and vibrant.
And against the dark green foliage, it just stands out superbly.
Now, how old do you reckon this tree is?
This tree would be around about 15 years old, I suppose.
And would it get much taller? Is this about the scope of it?
It will get much broader. If it's not pruned, it will come out quite a distance. But yeah, about the 4 to 5 metres is generally about the end of it. So it's getting up to close-ish to mature size.
And I can see it's kind of leggy. Is this a tree that likes a prune? I mean, obviously we'll talk about hedging in a minute, but as a specimen tree, should you be trimming it to make it a bit thicker?
Well, it's all a matter of taste.
Yeah.
I mean, I quite like the long arms coming out with the fruit hanging all over them. It actually is part of the value of the tree for me. But I've seen it grown as a pleached alley where it's been trimmed back to sort of,
beautiful.
Basically a hedge on stilts, I guess, a pleached alley. And so you could use it in lots of different ways, and it'd be great to screen out your nefarious behaviour from your next door neighbours.
Oh, well, you speak for yourself on that front. So in Mexico, what's its sort of native conditions? Where is it found?
Well, it's found up in the hills, so it grows in the cooler parts of Mexico, and it also grows down into Guatemala as well.
Well, I think without further ado, we should go and look at its exotic offspring and see what they have to offer.
What a good idea. Why don't we go and do that?
Let's go. All right, Stephen. So we've seen the mothership of Mexican hawthorns. What do we have before us?
All right. Now, she has created a few hybrids as she's gone along, mainly in France, mainly in the 1860s, 1870s.
Yeah.
And there is some dispute over the other parent. With
there
some of these.
Always is.
Yes. So, yes, the father is slightly unknown.
Remember that 80s miniseries? Which one of you bitches was my mother?
Yes.
Lace. And then there was Lace 2.
Oh, goodness me. Getting back to hawthorns,
okay.
Yes, as we must. This one is Cretagus Lavaliere. It's sometimes known here as the French thorn because, in fact, it was bred in France. Mexicanus was one of its parents. The other one is thought to be one of the other North American species, Crataegus crusgali. And it has the most exquisite orange fruit. So it's picked up the colour of the fruit of the father, but it's picked up the semi-evergreen habit of the Mexican hawthorn. So it's only just starting to turn now, and we're in early winter. It won't shed till about midwinter.
And will it go completely deciduous?
Oh, yes.
All its leaves?
Yes, this particular one will.
Whereas the Mexicana doesn't.
No.
It's evergreen.
Yeah, pretty well evergreen. Mexicana sheds old leaves as its new leaves are coming on.
So the thought of father of this is a North American species, but the similar-ish continent, so similarly close together. So has the South American hawthorns crossed with the European ones?
Yes. potentially they have. And
yes.
that's the next one we need to look at as well.
Okay.
Also a French hawthorn, also of somewhat disputed parentage. It was thought that this one being Crusgali cross Mexicana, and initially the other one, which we'll show you, was also thought to have the same parentage, but looks quite different. Now it would seem, through some research that's been done, that in fact the other one we're going to look at, Cretagus grignonensis, was actually Mexicanus possibly crossed monogyna, which is the classical hedging hawthorn of Europe.
Okay, I am beginning to vague out, but we'll go and have a look. I'm sure it'll keep up. But the first thing is, though, the habit of this tree, the hybrid, looks, is it a bit bushier than its Mexicana parent?
Not always. It could be seen as slightly bushier. You've got to remember that these trees are probably 10 or 15 years older than the Mexicana we were just looking at.
Okay.
These trees date back to about 1985, and so they are a little bit older, and so they've sort of got to their maximum height, but they're getting fuller.
It's really beautiful, and it's just stunning. But before we look at this sort of, it's not really an avenue, it's a non-hedge row, let's look at the other.
Yes, the other hawthorn, which
friends.
is, yes, because this row of hawthorns is actually a mixed planting, so they're not all the same as you go up this row. So
all right.
Let's have a look at the other one.
Let's look at the other one. All right, Stephen, so is this the errant half-cousin twice removed?
It certainly is. This is Cretagus grignonensis, I believe.
Yes.
And this one is Cretagus Lavaliere, and there is some dispute over whether this isn't actually a selected form of Lavallei, which could be called carrieri as well.
Oh, goodness.
It's all a bit much, but there you go. But it's worth looking for both.
They do look very different. These are obviously much smaller, redder berries. These are larger, oranger, and the
leaves are smaller. And it does actually illustrate another issue that hawthorns have in this country. We do have one pest problem that one gets a little annoyed about.
What is that?
And that is pear and cherry slug, which seems to love hawthorns as well as pears and cherries.
Pear, cherry and hawthorns.
And they can often create lots of damage on the leaves. Having said that, we did talk about this with meddlers as well.
We did.
Yeah, so we did do a video about meddlers.
Which we'll link.
We ignore it most of the time.
I must say, the fruit are the things that strike you because they are so stunning.
Yeah, and in such quantity. Yeah. So they fruit in huge numbers.
Well, I think what we might have to do is just take a little stroll up this avenue because I think you have a tale to tell, do you not?
I might well have.
Let's take a stroll, Mr. Ryan.
All right, let's go.
So, Stephen, tell me the story of your connection to this fabulous hawthorn hedge.
Yeah, hedge-ish, screenish. All right. Ash Wednesday bushfires here were in 1983.
Yep.
There were big cypresses along this street frontage which burnt in the fires, and with the owner at the time we decided to do something different, and I suggested a mixed planting of ornamental hawthorns. So around about 1985 these were planted, and they're now making a very important streetscape in the Mount Macedon region.
A very important streetscape. They are stunning. Does it give you satisfaction to see something like this?
It's fabulous to see things that I was involved with, and particularly if it was my bright idea.
Well, anyway, this does look stunning, and I'm so glad we're able to capture them at the peak of their autumnal glory.
They're looking fabulous at the moment.
They are.
All right, Stephen.
All right.
Is this the last cab off our hawthorn rank?
Well, it is at the moment.
Yes.
We may revisit the genus at some other time.
Hawthorn Revisited.
Yes, it could be.
Evelyn Waugh's lost novel.
This one is an interesting one, at least historically. It's also got a similar parentage to the others we're talking about, so it's probably got Mexicanus in it somewhere.
Can I say it looks a bit more upright and vertical?
It is, yes. It's a much more upright cultivar. Its fruit very similar to grignonensis, which I brought along with me, and you probably can't see much difference there. The foliage is bigger, and this particular plant is called Cretagus Smithiana. And there's two stories going around. And
involving a Mr. Smith?
Yeah, involving a Mr. Smith. If you look on Wikipedia, Cretagus Smithiana will be said to be a hawthorn thought to have been discovered at Yarralumla Nursery in Canberra.
Yes.
Which is fine, as far as it goes, but we're not sure that there was ever a Mr. Smith there, and so I've come to the conclusion, or at least I like this story better. There was a nursery that started in a town only 10-15 minutes away from where we're standing now, in a town called Riddles Creek, by a Mr. Smith. So Smith's Nursery of Riddles Creek. and he had the most incredible catalogue of plants that he was growing and selling. I have heard a rumour that this cultivar may well have originated at his nursery, and that for me not only makes sense because there was a Mr. Smith, but it's local, so I'm going to go with that one.
There you go. So you live for rumours, Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Can we let's pluck some fruits of the forbidden tree?
Yeah.
And
so we have Exhibit A is Smithiana. So that's
this one here.
This one here.
I'll hold that.
You hold that one. Exhibit B is grignonensis, very similar.
Which we just saw.
Yes, which
I'll
was the
hold
previous
that.
one. And Exhibit C is lavallei, probably lavallei carrieri, which is the French hawthorn.
And that is much bigger and more orange, and yeah, well, there is a little
there's
obvious
gradients.
difference.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Ryan, I have loved our hawthorn journey. The hedge you planted is looking stunning.
I think they're a wonderful group of plants. They're historically appropriate to our district because the hedging hawthorn, monogyna, was used a lot around the plains around us as hedging around farm properties.
And in Tasmania, a lot of hawthorns in Tasmania.
So, although those ones are now considered to be on the weed list, these ornamental ones are fantastic trees. They don't tend to self-seed themselves, and they're highly desirable because they're tough, they're flowery, they're fruity, they're autumn colory. They
drought tolerant.
Yes, they cope with practically anything our Mediterranean style climate can throw at them. So we need to rethink them, and also considering the fact that you can use the fruit on most of them, and that they're a moderately small tree, so that they'd be a perfectly good specimen tree for a small suburban garden. So let's re-look at the hawthorns.
But these hybrids you can still use as a hedging plant. You can still cut them quite severely and use them as a hedge option.
They just cost more.
Well, what could our adventure be next week, Mr. Ryan?
Goodness only knows, but we'll engage with some interesting group of plants or some interesting technique, I'm sure.
We will. So until then, we look forward to seeing you. Take care.
Bye all.